You're listening to the continuation of Cross-Section of a Human Heart, a memoir of early adulthood, by Abi Wurdeman, read for you by the author. Each story in this book can stand alone, but if you prefer to listen to them in order, you can find links to previous chapters in the description below. Five. That time my brother and I spent a decade breaking records. I sat at the kitchen table in my oldest brother's apartment, checking my email for the 63rd time. Adam sat in his recliner, flipping through the channels the way he always has, checking the score of the boxing match, checking the score of the Cardinals game, checking to see if the sports commentators on ESPN were yelling anything interesting at each other. I've grown convinced that channel flipping is a sport of its own for my oldest brother. Between his quick mind and the natural habit of turning every task into a game of strategy, I imagine his channel surfing as a complex calculation, a mathematical determination that if he flips away from the movie now, he can check 3 scores and see 1 kickoff and still get back to the movie in time for the next explosion. This is not a skill I would ever have. No skill Adam has is a skill I would ever have. He's practical and mathematical. I'm verbal and expressive. Adam loves action movies. I think more than one explosion in a film makes everything too loud. He loves the strategy of risk. I spend all my armies on the countries I'd most like to visit one day and am driven off the board within the first 30 minutes. He owns an impressive collection of mint-condition baseball cards. I own 4 different editions of Anne of Green Gables. You get the point. I love and admire my oldest brother deeply, and on uncommon occasions, he has given me information that suggests he is not altogether indifferent to me either. But we grew up having no clue how to talk to one another. We did pretty well when there was a buffer. Our parents or our cousins or our brother Phil, who shares major interests and personality traits with me and shares a gender, sports knowledge, and some childhood social circles with Adam. Left alone, however, our conversations always kind of fizzled under the awkward weight of our oppositeness. I'd ask about his work. He'd attest that it was fine. He'd ask about my plays, and I'd tell him rehearsals were going well. Then someone would have to get to bed or something, and the conversation would be over. Without consulting Adam, I'm going to go ahead and suggest that the subtext of our conversations went something like this. I care about your life, I just don't understand it well enough to ask anything more specific. I know you do. I think the details might bore you, though. I care about yours too, by the way. I know. In college, I started noting how long our conversations lasted. Anything over 5 minutes would make me giddy, especially when we started breaking our previous records. I'd press end, see the time of 12 minutes, 36 seconds on my screen, and I'd feel like we were getting somewhere. 12 minutes, 36 seconds is nothing when you're alone in a room with someone, though. It was the holiday break after my first tour with Bridgework, and I stopped in to stay with Adam in St. Louis before heading all the way down to Lubbock to see my parents. Because I attended college in Illinois, then worked with Bridgework in Indiana, Adam's apartment was often my overnight stop between the Midwest and Texas. It gave me an opportunity to see him, but usually I'd get there late at night. We'd have a brief conversation, then we'd both head to bed. I'd get up early to leave town, and I'd see him again when he came down for Christmas, at which point we'd laugh and play games together with the buffer of family surrounding us. This time, I got there early. We had our brief exchange. How's this? Fine. How's that? Fine. Cool. Then there was this huge, gaping hole where conversation was supposed to be. He flipped channels, and I sat at my laptop, refreshing my Facebook every 7 seconds and occasionally asking him stupid questions about his promotion. So, is it rewarding to supervise things? Like, regionally? Eventually, Adam's channel flipping took him to an action flick in which the protagonist executes justice through the stupidest means possible. The plot was absurd, the dialogue was cheesy, and the hero falls predictably in love with a golden-hearted stripper. It was a cinematic train wreck, and it was magic. It was magic because it was so awful, so universally and undeniably awful, it became the one form of entertainment that completely absorbed both me and Adam. He let go of the remote. I moved from the kitchen table to the living room couch. We spent the next 90 minutes ripping on this god-awful movie together, united in the two most powerful bonding forces, laughter and a shared sense of superiority. We watched the whole thing, every melodramatic line of dialogue, every gratuitous explosion, every scene in which the defenseless love interest is forced to run from danger clad only in a skirt and a red bra. We even watched the trivia segments that transitioned us to commercial breaks. For the first time ever, we had created something that was ours exclusively. Our inside joke, our shared experience. And while our night of cringeworthy cinema didn't mark the advent of a relationship characterized by easy bonding and seamless conversations, it did begin to break down the walls we'd imposed on ourselves by focusing almost exclusively on our many, many differences. In the years that followed, I continued to note our conversation times. 15 minutes, 32 seconds. 18 minutes, 10 seconds. 21 minutes even. With each conversation, we'd share a little more, increasingly confident that even if the other person didn't have the proper professional context for words like strike price or script supervisor, they did have the right human context to connect with the ambitions, frustrations, and successes we were trying to communicate. It turns out, for all the sports statistics and business jargon that color his life, Adam is not the opposite of me. I'm still learning how alike we are. One of the best lessons came when I was 28 and wouldn't be able to go back to St. Louis for Christmas. I tried to be cool about it, but I'm a creature of tradition. I love ritual, the yearly motions that represent family and unity and love and all that mushy Christmas BS. I'd always considered this my weakness. Within a family of practical people who love deeply but fuss little, I always felt like the crazy one who irrationally cared how the Advent calendar was arranged and which Christmas albums we played and whether we were all together. I was heartbroken to spend a traditionless holiday alone, and because my mother always forgives me for my big feelings, I called her to vent my frustrations. She listened, told me she understood, then said, "You should talk to your brother." "No, this kind of thing doesn't bother Phil." "Your other brother. You and Adam, you both feel so strongly about traditions. And he's always disappointed when you or Phil miss a holiday. He doesn't react like you," translation, cry, "but he would understand where you're coming from." Of course, I didn't talk to Adam. If you respect Adam's personal sense of comfort and sanity, you don't really call him about your feelings unless you are one of his children or someone has died. But I thought about him a lot. I thought of all the things I'd failed to notice over the years, like the fact that he was the one person I could always count on to take up causes like, "How are we not going to Kansas City this year?" and "We don't have red and green M&Ms. Is this not a Wurdeman Christmas?" I realized that in my selectively sentimental family, there was someone else who revered tradition as something deeper than habit, as a connecting, grounding force. I felt strangely close to home that Christmas as I cooked a single steak and watched Scrooged, my phone lighting up every couple hours with a new photo from Adam. My 2-year-old niece in her red Christmas dress, Adam's teenager Megan holding up the present I sent her, about 3 photos of his toddler tending to stuffed animals with the doctor's kit I sent her. Each photo was a testament to my mathematical, sports-loving, business-minded brother's understanding of my not-so-opposite heart. He knew what would connect me to the holiday I was missing. He got me. He called 2 days later to ask how my solo Christmas had been. He caught me in Target and I completely lost track of my shopping goals, absent-mindedly feeling the fabric of socks and testing the weight of ceramic mugs as he told me about Megan's plans for college and his new job. He went on and on about how much he likes the people he works with, what's rewarding and frustrating about the work itself, the fact that the commute is long, but he doesn't hate it. He told me about his golf league and how his sister-in-law's fiancé was still battling cancer. He asked about my writing, and I told him how I felt about Phil's and my new manager and what our hopes were for the future. When our conversation ended, not with claims about getting up early, but with my toddler niece throwing a tantrum that needed to be dealt with, I pressed end and looked at the time. 34 minutes and 18 seconds. A new record. Do you even know these people? A questionnaire. Quick heads up for anyone who is on the cusp of adulthood. You may not know your siblings like you think you do. See, for most of us, the people in our family are people we've always just known. We never met them. We never went through a curiosity period, a get-to-know-you phase. I recommend you usher in that neglected get-to-know-you phase now. Between the fact that your understanding of your sibling is partly built from your own adolescent perception and the fact that they are changing and evolving the same way you are, there are probably some meaningful gaps in your knowledge. For example, how does your sibling believe the rest of the family perceives them? What were they most insecure about in high school? How did they imagine their lives turning out? Did they ever wish they were more like you? Do they know what you admire about them? How do they feel at family gatherings? Do they believe in God? Did your perceptions of them growing up match their experiences? Were they ever afraid when you thought they were confident, lonely when you thought they were popular, ambitious when you thought they were slacking? Do they still think about Dobby sometimes? You see, in adulthood, the edges start to blur on these people you once knew like the back of your hand. They live in different houses, often with someone you only met a few years ago. They work in an office you've never seen and mumble opinions at CNN that you can't hear and collect new victories and traumas that you were not there to witness. The most familiar people in your life turn into old friends you want to get reacquainted with. You start asking questions. You learn things. And some of the things you learn aren't even about who they are now. They're about who they've always been. And when it comes to family, it's so easy to mistake the way we've always experienced someone for the absolute truth of who they are. Granted, I don't think you should take the above questions and grill your siblings with them at the next reunion. The point isn't to force these answers. The point is to realize you don't have them yet. To look at your siblings and ask yourself if you're still defining them according to an understanding you developed when you were 6 years old. The point is to get excited about meeting your brothers and sisters for a second first time. As long as they're not genuinely terrible people. Hi, I'm Abi Wurdeman, author of Cross-Section of a Human Heart, and the voice you've been listening to for the last 15 minutes or so. I am releasing a story from the book every Sunday, plus a little bonus author commentary. So if you don't want to miss the next one, make sure you subscribe. For today, we're talking, of course, about that time my brother and I spent a decade breaking records. And if I'm completely honest, I was not looking forward to recording this particular story. I had the exact same feeling when I was first editing the book. The book started as a blog that I edited into a memoir. And when I sat down to edit this particular blog post, I was not, I was dreading it. And it's not because I don't like the story. I love the story. Obviously, it's very personal to me. Um, it's just that I never feel like anyone else is going to like the story. I just feel like this is a boring story. Nothing, nothing happens in the story. And you might agree with me, and that's totally cool. The reason I published it anyway, the reason I recorded it anyway, is because it brings me a lot of joy. And that's that every time I sit down to work on it, I think, God, I dread it because I feel like as I'm working on it, I'm gonna feel like I should cut it. But I don't want to cut it because it's important to me. But then I get through the whole thing and I'm like, no, that was just packed with joy. And it's possible that it's only joyful for me. It's possible that no one else feels that feeling. But one, if it's just for me, that's enough. And two, as an author, I have learned that a lot of times the stories that I think people are going to like the least are the ones they like the most. And they are usually either the stories that I am terrified to share, or they're stories like this one where it makes me so happy, but I don't think anyone else is going to care. So here's my gamble. And there are a lot of reasons why this story made me made me very happy, and it kind of changes each time I read it. You know, right now it was really fun for me because I can see how my relationship with Adam has evolved. You know, we're still not besties calling each other on all our lunch breaks, but we know each other better, and we've been through a lot of grown-up things together now. We we went through our father's illness and death. He and my brother Phil walked me down the aisle. Um, we've both been traveling a lot, so that's something we've kind of started to connect over. There's all this space to evolve, which I think is something that's easy to forget about relationships, and especially to forget about long-term relationships when you're in your 20s. Because we kind of grow up with things being a certain way, or with the assumption that things are supposed to be a certain way. We get locked into the roles that our families put us in when we're growing up, that we put ourselves in. We tend to lock our siblings into those roles too, and our parents and our cousins. Everyone's kind of stuck in this frame, the way we define things when we were young. And it is a really special thing to be able to make that choice as you're getting older, to try to connect with this person as if you're meeting them for the first time, because it gives them a chance to communicate, maybe not directly, but to communicate whether they feel misunderstood in the family, or it gives them space to change. And when you give them space to change, a lot of times they'll give you space to change. I feel like that's such a beautiful thing about these relationships that we have for a lifetime, or even, for a couple decades, whether it's a family relationship or it's a friendship, is that when you have someone in your life that long, and when they've stuck around that long, it means that you've both made space for the other person to learn and evolve and make different decisions. And you've been able to approach those changes with curiosity and openness. I mean, that kicks ass. That's what the good relationships are all about. The other reason that I really that this story really struck me this time was because there was some line in there. I don't remember what it was, but it was when I was explaining how Adam and I got better at having longer conversations, and I said something about how we had learned to trust that the other person cares about hearing your stories, even if they don't have the life context to totally understand it, or even if it's something they can't relate to. Um, I think I think sometimes with relationships, it can be it can be easy to forget that we're not a streaming service for our friends and our family. People people don't just come to us to be entertained. Probably you are entertaining. You're probably funny, or, charming, or whatever. We tend to value these things in our friends. We tend to like these things. But, the reason relationships last that long is that it's not because you're there for entertainment. And this is really personal to me because it's something that um I had to relearn recently. Had a woman my mom's age uh, read my book when it first came out, and she said something that has always stuck with me, which is that she said you relearn these lessons over your life. And I keep thinking of her as I'm re-recording it, because there are these I keep running into things that I am learning again, or something comes up that I am currently working on. It's like a new version of it. It's like a next level version of it, but you don't stop with these things. So anyway, when my dad died, like about 4.5 years ago, I went through a phase where it was really hard to be around people. And I mean, specifically, I mean, all people, but except for my husband was pretty easy. But um, it had to do with this thing that happens, I think, to a lot of us when we go through a massive loss like that, which is that it kind of breaks down the person you were before. You're not going to be the same after you go through that. And for me, and I think probably for a lot of people, there was definitely this period of feeling like I just didn't know who I was. I knew that the old version was gone. I didn't know who was showing up next. And the idea of being around my friends, it just made me feel like I would be walking into the room just like this blank sheet of notebook paper, just all flat and floppy and sitting there with like just these empty lines with nothing on them. I felt like I had nothing to contribute. I couldn't show up as the person that they became friends with. I had nothing new to offer. Um, it was, I was grieving, so I was kind of in this state where I was slow and exhausted and confused a lot of the times, little bouts of depression here and there, contemplating my mortality a lot. Like it's not stuff, it's not stuff that's fun. And the idea of trying to figure out how to come up with something fun to do and what to wear and leaving the house and driving there and being interesting and like laughing at an appropriate, enthusiastic, engaged volume. Like it was, it was so hard and it was too much. And what I really needed was to just like have a friend come over and eat bad food with me and have stupid conversations about whatever stupid thoughts come into our brains and um, watch, mediocre movies. I needed something that was so easy and so low stakes and just someone who would just be with me in a way where it was clear that I didn't need to be anything. The problem is I didn't know that this was what I needed at the time. I just knew that I wasn't showing up enough, but I also didn't know how to show up the way I showed up before. So I think if I had known to ask for that, and I think if I had been brave enough to ask for that, I think I would have gotten it. It's just so easy to forget that people don't need us to be entertaining. And a lot of the people in our lives, the ones who last long term, they don't even need us to be the same all the time. They just what they need most, I think, is for us to be open, to be willing to show them who we are now, to tell them the stories that we have, and to trust that they care even if they can't relate to it. So if you need to be open and vulnerable with someone, here's your reminder. It's this video. In the meantime, I will look forward to seeing you next week for it's something like that time I won a blue ribbon even though I'm slow. It's if that's not the exact title, that's the gist. So hopefully I'll see you back here then. And in the meantime, please remember to like and subscribe. Okay, I'll see you soon.